My goal is to guide people to owning who they are. It's to just accepting and believing in their journey, in their path, and their importance in the world, because that's what we need now. That's why the world is in a bit of chaos, because we're going through this big change. But we are all here, and we each have something to bring to the world if we decide to believe it and accept it.
The courage to act. I mean, if anybody's listening, the courage to act is the key that goes in the lock that unlocks opportunity. And a good coach will help you find the courage to act and to network with people and continue to show up every day authentic, believe in your dream, and then you start seeing results.
I got to tell you, before we start, you're my first interview where I'm talking about where I am now and what I'm doing and what my work is. So I'm glad that we're doing this together. So I'll let you take over.
Excellent, Roger. Yes, we have a pretty interesting history between the two of us. Two creative people, authors. You've went down the road of podcasting. I've went down the road of writing and writing for books and magazines. And it's truly my honor to be connected to you and all the wonderful things that we've done together in synchronicity. Every time I have got stuck in the past, you are my go-to person to write an email to. And then I say, I'm going to give Roger an impossible problem to solve. And he's going to use his little creativity, and he's going to direct me down a new path or teach me about pivot. So your coaching has been priceless to me, and I appreciate all the patience that you've gracefully helped me through that. But we're here today to talk about your career and what your goals are, and what's a little bit about your past, and then what your goals and dreams are for the future.
Well, it's perfect that you began with that, because that's really what I want to talk about. When we first met, I said some things to you that were kind of surprising. This was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And when I did that, I didn't know what I had said. And I want to talk about that part of it first, because I'm intuitive and I receive information all the time. And I will say things to my clients, and I know that it's something that is in their purview, something that's within their life path, so to speak. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to follow it. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to own it. And we are in that place now where a lot of us are questioning, well, what's happening? Where is the world going? And all of that. And I knew this several years ago. And this is why when you first came, I do this thing in my life, and I've always done it, where I need to test something to know if what is coming through is accurate. And this is what we're all doing about right now, because the way the world looks, we're like, what's happening? What's going to go on? But I knew that that was coming about several years ago, which is why I started talking about it. And when you came in, it was a very weird thing, because it was Seth Green that invited you, right?
Yes,
because
Seth and I talked, and he said, go to Roger.
Yeah. And we think that things are happening accidentally, and they never are. We just figure it out later. But what Seth did was he wanted me to just talk to some people. He says, what can I help you with? And so we set up this thing where I said, what's the answer to your question? Where you would come in and I would just see what would come through. And I did it for a couple of reasons. I wanted to see if I had any skills. I wanted to see if it was accurate, even though I've done it most of my life. But still, accepting our talents and our abilities and our gifts, it's always a challenge. And I wrote about that this morning, about doubt. We have self-doubt about everything, every single person, no matter where we are, what level we think we are in our lives, there is always more that we can move to. And what I started feeling and telling and talking to everyone about is that the world was changing. And so in that change, a lot of us, like you, would be finding things that, oh, wait a minute, I have something to offer the world. And that's exactly what you had. And you had that because of what you had lived, because of your work in law enforcement and your prior career and all of that. You saw things and you knew things and you figured things out. And so what better way to put it into a story? So when I saw your book and what you were talking about and what your history was, well, it would make sense that that was coming about now, because it was about healing. It was about bringing some resolution to whatever we've lived. That is what our world is doing right now. And each of us play a part in that, a critical part, a vital part, because it's deciding whether or not we're going to own the lives that we were given. And that's what you decided to do.
I decided to own it. I had just launched the book. We had talked and I had said, the best possible thing is to sell a number of copies of the book and try to pivot to a movie. And you said, my intuition is speaking to me, and that's a really good decision. And you should network with people and try to get the book to pivot to a movie. As of recently, like we talked about, Life Giant Studios approached me. We're in the initial phase of talking about a movie deal. It's in development. So your intuition 24 months ago predicted this, and it's happened. And I'm a little spooked, but I'm also super excited. Very thankful. Very thankful. I might not have had the courage to reach out to people in network if you didn't give me the encouragement and suggest it was a good idea, and then tell me, well, my intuition's always right, which I question, right? I questioned that. And then you said, no, trust me, run with it, go with it, and keep plugging along until you get it. And today, yes, I do have a book pivoting toward a movie in development. And I want to thank you for keeping me motivated.
No, you're welcome. Listen, you motivate me. Let me talk about that, because we all have intuition. And how much are we going to trust that? How much are we going to allow it to develop? Now, because of my life, I had to, because I had a challenging, difficult life for a lot of time. So in 1988 is when I started to do meditation and do automatic writing, which is when I began receiving information from my Wilhelm, my guide. We all have something. But still, for me to accept that, and to believe that it was valid, that it was something real, was uncomfortable. Just like every person has something that they're looking at in front of them that they're given to do in this life, and they're doubting it. I did that. So what happens is when we confirm our doubts, which happens when I work with people like you, and I see, oh yeah, that was right. That was what was supposed to come about. So then now my intuition is strengthened. And what I'm here to do gets bigger as well, which is what everyone else is here to do. And I'm very clear that my goal is to guide people to owning who they are, is to just accepting and believing in their journey, in their path, and their importance in the world, because that's what we need now. That's why the world is in a bit of chaos, because we're going through this big change. But we are all here, and we each have something to bring to the world if we decide to believe it and accept it. I was an interesting thing. Nothing happens by accident, but this morning I was led to a video, a documentary with William Shatner. Never heard of this before, this particular thing. And it was called Weird or What? And what this thing where he was talking about things we can't explain, that we can't explain and we've had it forever, as long as we've existed. And but he was talking about three specific cases in this one particular video that I saw, and where this guy predicted this plane crash and people said that's not possible. It couldn't possibly happen, and it went on and on. The guy couldn't let go of it, and then that plane crash happened. And then you had everybody else coming about trying to explain, well, what could that have been? Then you have people who make conspiracy theories about it, because it's like, no, this couldn't have happened. And then because we have to find some logical answer for everything that's going on. We don't believe that something could be orchestrated by the universe or by God or by or something. You know, it's hard to accept that that is what's going on. So we have to find some human terminology that would have this make sense so we can feel solid. Except that's not happening now. Where we are now is in a completely different world, and everything that we knew before is going to be different, but it's going to be better if we each decide to do what you're doing. And that
Own
is
myself. You
yes,
motivated
exactly.
me. You said, trust me. We were on a coaching call and I was sitting in a coffee shop and I had wrote down a bunch of things about being my authentic self. And I was a little afraid to throw it to social media. And we talked and you said, do it. Just trust me. Own it. Own who you are. Show up authentic. Put it on social media. I'm not sure if you remember, but some of those conversations and some of the postings got somebody interested in Hollywood. You did a posting for me, which
Oh,
got
right.
me
Yes, yeah.
directly to Heart of Hollywood magazine, which opened up a few other doors, networking and working really hard to get to Life Giant Studios. So, yes, if there's anybody listening, contact Roger Burnley. Burnley method, rogerburnley.com. Go to rogerburnley.com. Trust me.
Thank you. And most people won't. Now, let me tell you what that is too.
Okay, let's go down. Let's get down this path. I'm interested.
We have this aversion to the unknown. We have this fear of the unknown. And it all depends on a lot of different factors, but how we've lived our lives, how we've grown up, our influences from our relatives, our families, or whatever it might be. And so, and I use this analogy when we can think of kids being born. You know, when we come into the world, we've got these 9 months that we're in the womb. And so we feel safe. And then we come out into the world and we start screaming because we don't know where the hell we are and what's going on. And so depending on how those instances affect us, because we know all kids are different, they will operate differently. Some kids come in and they're really curious and they'll explore everything. Some people are really afraid. Kids they have to cling to their mothers and they don't do anything. It's all different. So why are we different? Why does that happen? It's because we've come into the world with something that we're meant to do. And so those conditions that we feel are what we were given. Now, depending and sometimes that unknown is really uncomfortable, you see. And so, but if we decide that we're going to step into it, then we start to become more of why we're on the earth, why we were born, because everybody has that. Everybody has a purpose and a value that they're meant to give to the world. And a lot of times we don't accept that. We don't believe it because we think it's got to be some big thing or it has to be some important kind of, no, it's just you. It's just your life. It's just, and the thing that I'm taking people to now, because I understand this transition our world is moving through. I just want people to be happy, successful, and prosperous. That's all. Because everyone has that ability if they are willing to work through their blockages, work through their issues. And see, your book talks about this a bit in different ways, which you may not completely understand. But when you're dealing with crime, you're dealing with people who have lost their way.
Correct.
Yeah. And so there's no reason that they had to go there except that they didn't uncover the gifts that they had that they were meant to bring to the world. And so when we don't find that, we become desperate. And we'll go out and steal something or go out and kill people to try to find the sense of importance, except everyone already has it built into them. And I can talk about this because I didn't do this most of my life. I doubted everything. I just wrote yesterday an article said I am a mystic. Yes, I am a mystic. And a coach, because I need people to understand that when I work with people, my goal is to take you to what is going to cause your life to be magnificent, what's going to cause you to love yourself and love other people and just get on with doing what you came to do. your life, your career was something that you were given that was going to make a difference to the world. Not just to your life, but to the world. And that's the connection that a lot of people don't make. But I'm determined to have more people make that connection, because then we change our world.
I see the big picture now. I didn't see it before, but I see the big picture. I was given the ability to go do firework, police work, have these experiences. I was also given the gift of writing and having a vivid imagination and creativity. And then I got to a point where I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit of belief in the idea. I had a little bit of belief, talked to Seth sent me to you, and the belief grew, and then the motivation and the courage to act. I mean, if anybody's listening, the courage to act is the key that goes in the lock that unlocks opportunity. And a good coach will help you find the courage to act and to network with people and continue to show up every day authentic, believe in your dream, and then you start seeing results. And the results are relative to the amount of courage, strength, and faith you have in just showing up and living embedded in the truth of that dream. When I met you, I was wavering.
We all do.
Then, I've been stepping forward. Some days stepping a little bit of forward, other days leaping forward, but every day I've been stepping forward. And I hope you can, connect with clients and get them results like me. I know you can do that. And there's a beautiful value in it.
I'm glad you used the word courage, though.
Courage. It is the secret. It's the secret.
Exactly. And we have to look at that, because everybody has something, and they will understand this. There's something in front of them that they kind of know they're being directed or guided to do. But then if they start talking about it or start believing, or even to themselves, forget about other people, but if they start giving it to themselves, wait a minute, I could be a little nuts here. It couldn't be me. I couldn't be the one who was given this particular path to follow, or I couldn't have be the one who was given this dream that I was meant to fulfill. And the fact is, yes, you were. Every single person was, but it's this breaking down that disbelief that we have, being willing to suspend that disbelief for a while.
I totally agree.
And we need to have that happen. When, because we're in 2022, I don't know whenever people might see this, but when the war began when Russia attacked Ukraine, people saying, "What? Wait a minute, what's happening? This is 2022. We're not supposed to have wars now. We're not supposed to be having this. No other person. This has never happened not happened in all these years in history in Europe, especially, to have something like that." And I said 2 years ago, yeah, it could be, because I knew where we were moving. And I put out something and people said, "This guy's a little nuts." I said, because I received this information, it said, we could have another Hitler. See, because we needed to move civilization. We needed to move into a way where more people owned who they were and that we had a better world. We can see now that this has caused what has gone on. We have caused these great divisions in our world, in our countries, and all of that. However, I was told back in 2012, when I was receiving this information, yeah, you're going to have some chaos.
Yeah.
But it always breeds unity. And the point of that was, we are each here to bring that unity together within us, owning who we are, why we're here, what we came to the earth to do. And I love using that because people think, well, that doesn't make sense. I wasn't born to do anything. Yes, you were. Every single person. There's this one guy, and this is my biggest example, because we will make up these ideas that we are not important enough because we don't have something. We weren't given something, or we weren't born in the wrong place. It's just an excuse that we all make up. And Tony Robbins used to use this guy, and I've talked about him often. Nick Vukovic, he's this guy who was born with no arms or legs. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but if you haven't,
I have.
You have. Perfect. Greatest motivational speaker around, because he's showing us that we just make up excuses about what we can get done, about what we can do. And now we've moved into this time where it is important that we should all do it. This morning, as a matter of fact, the message that came through, because I do this every day, well, I receive information, but the information that came through, they told me to go back to 2012. And I know people think this doesn't make any sense. Well, how could you know something back there? We all do. There's a continuation of events and circumstances that exist in our world, and sometimes we figure that out. If we study history, it's easier. If we study our history, we can see over time civilizations have changed, and we just happen to be existing at a time where we're moving through a great change in our world. But what we're here to do, we've got to really accept our particular part, our role. And that's what I had to do. And it was challenging. But I also know that because of my life, everything I had gone through, which most people don't even know the half of it, all the things that I experienced and overcame, well, yeah, that was the life I was given. But if I put that together in a way and make sense of it, then it becomes valuable for everyone else. And that's where we are.
Exactly. You said something priceless. You said, you got to have some chaos to move to unity.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely agree with that. And if you study history and look at World War II 70 years ago, they had chaos and it was very messy. And then they got unity. Then Germany came together. The UN was established. The world's become a more productive place, a more civil place. And maybe we are cycling back through another element of chaos to get to greater unity and whatnot. Very, very priceless statement. Keep going with that, Roger. You're on something.
Well, it happens now when we decide to accept that.
Yeah.
And so what came up this morning was the message that I was given on this date in 2012, because my guys, they love using this specific date. So we have this synchronicity because we can't believe certain things are happening. I've told people forever that, well, wait a minute. I was told that I was given all this information in 2012. That's not possible. How could that happen? Because we have this idea about how time is supposed to work, this linear time, these sequential things. But there's so much more beyond that. And scientists and people who study quantum physics and mechanics and all that know something different. We've discovered it even when they started breaking down the energy and finding out, wait a minute, the only thing that exists is energy. Energy it's ever present. So it's always here. All we're doing is moving it around at times, And so what we're doing now,
inside the atom is energy. You're correct.
Yes,
keep going.
Exactly. And so what we've got to come to, well, how are we affecting that? What are we doing with the energy that is within each of us? Because we can cause change. And then when you start, and this is a concept that no people is challenging to accept, but when you start thinking, okay, this is energy. So if I'm emitting energy, if I'm putting energy into the world, then that's going to have a cumulative effect in some way. And so if I'm being happy, if I'm loving myself and getting on with doing what I came to the world to do, then I'm putting that energy into the world. Now, if I'm hating myself, if I'm beating myself up, if I'm saying all these negative things, then I'm putting that into the world. And now I'm going to start looking at other people and I'm going to do the same thing to them. I'm going to make them wrong because that's what we do. When we can't figure out why we're stuck, then we make it somebody else's fault. Let's blame them. It's that kind of thing. But the message today was a solution, because we're going to look at our world. We're going to see everything that's going on, and we're seeing it right now. Even today, we're like, okay, what's Putin going to do? Is he going to use a nuclear weapon? Was that going to happen? And so my message that I was given in 2012, we were supposed to pay attention to today, was that there is always a way. There's always a solution. And then it said that the solution that you always want to find is the one that is a win-win solution, meaning that you all get something from it. And that's where we are now, what we're figuring out in our world and in our lives, in our individual lives. And so what I'm doing, my contribution is working with people like you who want to feel secure in where they're going, who want to know that their path is the one that they're meant to follow, because we're going to always doubt it. And so this is why we have coaches and mentors and influencers that we will listen to sometimes, to believe, well, okay, I believe this a little bit now. And the other thing that you said, little by little, we only accept ourselves in increments. That's what typically happens, But then if you understand, oh, but I'm building momentum now. And you said it so brilliantly, because that belief that you had kept growing.
Correct. It like a snowball, and then it starts to get some momentum, and then at a certain point, it's got enough volume, and there's enough pieces to it. You say, this is a random chance.
Exactly.
This is an accumulative thing. It's not random chance. I do have some creative gifts. I should bring them to the world. And then you have to stay the course, because like anything in creativity, there's a gestation period to get uphill and then hit the peak of it and ride it out. And then some reinvestment of courage and strength to maintain the dream and fuel the dream, because the dream could fail if you don't fuel it and stick with it, take action. I write down a dozen things every day on a notepad, one of which was to meet Roger Bertley and talk to him today. And that is my courage. I write them down. That's the easy part. And then I follow through and scratch them off.
Right.
And if I can continue to do that.
Did we talk about that?
I don't believe we talked about that, but that's my method.
That's one of the things that I use with my clients, because we have so much going on all the time and we don't get it done. And so I said, okay, just do this. I said, this is an ancient technique. Just write down several of them that you want to get done that next day. Just do it at night before you go to bed. Just write them down. And then you get up in the morning. Now you have clear direction. You can see what they are. And then you keep going through and you just keep marking them up. Now, you will probably get to some days where you're not marking some of them off. And then you look at your list, and because you're supposed to repeat this list until you get them all off, but then certain things may still be sitting there. So then you're going to look at that and go, wait a minute, is this something that maybe don't want to do? Or maybe it's not part of where I'm supposed to be going? Or maybe I'm afraid of it. So whatever it is.
There you go. Maybe I'm afraid of it, and why? Yeah,
exactly.
That's tough work. I got to tell you. Maybe I'm afraid of it, and why? Yeah. Maybe I'm afraid of success. Maybe I'm afraid of failure. Maybe I'm a little afraid of both. And that puts somebody in procrastination. And I'll throw the procrastination word out and I'll shut up, because you know a lot about procrastination.
Procrastination is, I've suffered so much, and we do it for different reasons. Now, mine was, I had this perfectionistic thing going on all the time, which a lot of us have, or that fear of the unknown too, and then always wanting to know the result before we do something, all the things that hold us back, all the things that just keep us stuck somewhere. And I had to decide, I got to go for it. I just have to move. Now, when I put together, I have a program now that I knew I was supposed to use for this particular time in our world. And I'm trying to explain this to people, what the purpose was and what it was going to do for them. And it was challenging, because what's that going? Why should I become my authentic self? Why should I go through these motions and do all of this? And then when I tell them, well, listen, if you come into my program in a month, you're going to know everything crystal clear. It's going to be there. And then I said, and you're going to feel so much better about yourself. You're going to have a direction. You won't have it all done, but you're going to know everything. And I guarantee that you're going to have those results. And then what I did is said, I'm going to make it really inexpensive for you to do that. I'm going to make it so easy for you to do it. And it's absolutely guaranteed. And you're going to have the result. People won't do it. Yeah. They won't do it because they don't believe it's possible for them. Because we program ourselves. If we've had experiences in the past where we've done this, I changed the name of my program too. I called it the Last Development Program, because a lot of people we've done so many programs. I was talking to a friend yesterday. She was mentioning a program that she bought years ago, never opened it, never looked at it. This is what we do. We think, here's a tool, here's something. But the other part of that is that we don't believe it's going to work. So why start? Because then we'll just get disappointed again. And then having someone like me saying, I'm giving you a guaranteed result. No, that couldn't possibly happen because I didn't get it before. And I say to you, that's because you gave up.
Gave up and listened to what's the word? You've listened to a little conditioning from the
Yes.
world, because the
Yes.
world tells us a lot of stuff is impossible. And it's only impossible if we buy in to the word impossible.
Right.
It is possible if we just stick to our faith and say, I'm taking action today. I'm not
Right.
making up my mind if it's going to happen or not. I'm just going to take action. I'm going to act on courage today,
Mhm.
and I'm going to show up and take action and continue to do that till it gives me feedback. And then when I see a result, I'm going to get really excited. But it does take some courage to show up and
Right.
take action and see minimal results. But once you
Mm.
see results, it's easy to have faith.
Right.
But you
I
can't
did
start with faith.
exactly. And sometimes, and I am no different. I did it. This happened just the other day. I did a channeling session a year ago on October 20th of 2021. And this is when I do a channeling session, which I know a lot of people don't completely understand in people in the spiritual world who kind of get it, but we all receive information. I've just been practicing it in a different way for a long time. So I can translate the information that I am receiving, but I also don't know what the heck I'm saying. Just like when I was with you and I'll tell you certain things in the moment, I know that it's really accurate, but I'm not going to remember it later. And so it happens all the time. People come back to me and go, remember when you told me this? I go, no. But at the time I knew it was accurate. However, and so I went back and I listened to that session from October 20th of 2021, and it freaked me out because I'm like, it was really accurate in terms of what was happening and the information that came through that how did I know that? This, which takes me back to this little documentary that I saw earlier, the William Shatner thing, the weird or what. There was one thing with this one guy who was predicting this plane thing. And so everybody was trying to figure out in logical terms how he could have known that. And so this one guy at the very end, he came up with every logical explanation of how this guy could have known that because of things that had happened before, what he had seen, except for one particular element of that. This particular crash, which had never happened, no one had known this, so he could not have seen this before. But in this particular crash, the plane rolled over before it blew up. They said, well, that's never happened before, but that was a detail that this guy had in his head when he was talking about this that no one believed. And this is where we are with ourselves. It's about believing what we were given, believing who we are. And that's the world that we're existing in now. And the more of us who do that, we start to affect the world and change it in the way that we want it to be, basically.
Yes, yes. The more courage we have to listen to
Yes.
our intuition, listen to somebody like you who's polished their intuition, act with courage and act with faith and hope, or act with belief, and hope that the faith will show up is the secret. And yeah, it was about 2 years ago. Pretty much everything you said has come true. And like you were saying about the plane crash, when people have specific knowledge and they talk about it before it happens, it opens our mind up to the spiritual side of life, because we live in a materialistic world and we want a materialistic belief, and we want to
Exactly.
control the materialistic thing. And spirituality, we have to surrender to God and say, no, things are in God's hands, and
Exactly.
spiritual things are a little outside of our visual thing, but we do all have an intuition that speaks to us and says, go act on something. And I believe that's completely spiritual, and there's no physical origin for that thing that speaks to us and says, drive down to the store or go see Bob or something like that. It's we're being directed, and it's hard to if you're a very logical person and you're very rational, it's
Mhm.
hard to tap into that and say that's valuable, but it's probably more valuable than the material things.
Mhm.
And the faster we shift toward uh, listening to the spiritual side and acting on the physical side, the more success we have in life.
And a lot of us have trouble with that. I had trouble with that, and for various reasons. We have programming, as you said, that we come in with, and it's generational, meaning however we have formed beliefs through our families or our countries or whatever it might be. And so I'm much older, and so it wasn't okay for people to do spiritual things. I would never talk about it because we had to stay in this lane of what it was to even be religious or go to church, all of that stuff. And it's no longer that. So then when spirituality or new age started coming about, or however people called it, it had this kind of negative, it's developed this negative connotation a bit, because people who had the old beliefs wanted us to stay in the old beliefs because it's safe. Going into something new and unknown is frightening. So we will make up things to try to say, no, this didn't happen. There's some other explanation for it. However, we'll be hard pressed to do that at this time, because the world's going to be completely different as we keep moving through this transition. But the best part of it is, and no matter what people believe about any of this, if they were to just study history and see that there have been many times where we've gone through great dramatic changes in the world. And then what happens is people have this vision, oh, wait a minute, this is the time for me to create something. This is the time for me to do something, and I'm being motivated now because of something that's happening out there that I don't know. And so I'm going to now start to create something. We don't know when that's going to happen. And I use Volodymyr Zelensky as a perfect example.
Yes.
Because here he is, this guy who now the world is looking at he's our leader, in a sense. We're looking at this guy because he's demonstrating this kind of a courage that, where did it come from, as you said? But he was placed in that position, and that seemed accidental. Yeah, he was an actor. He was a comedian and an actor, and he was just acting out a role on his TV show. And then all of a sudden he's elected president. Yeah, we're all doing the same thing, because the roles that we're acting out, we are creating them in our heads. But we can't do that unless we decide to accept them and believe them.
Yes, correct. And that guy, if you think about how much courage it takes to do stand-up comedy and be an actor, it's a good warm-up for being president of a country at war. Because most people, when you talk to them, have done stand-up comedy, they talk about the fact that they're proud they didn't piss their pants while they were standing up telling jokes.
Right,
because
yes.
It's a high rejection factor on that. So I guess if a guy was being groomed to be president during a war in a country, stand-up comedian and actor would be a real nice warm-up thing to get you ready. Thick skin and courage and high failure rate. It would be a great thing to warm somebody up for something that's really tough. And yeah, I have the highest respect for him, because he shows up and he delivers positive messages and with faith and courage in a moment where they could launch a missile at any time and just eliminate him. So my hat's off to the guy. And the war it's scary and tragic, but it could have a good ending. It could have a good ending.
It will have a good ending, and that's exactly what's happening. This is the information that came through in one of my channeling sessions more than a year ago, and it said, well, you're looking at Russia and Ukraine, how what's happening there, but it's not going to turn out the way that you think it will. And people thought, that doesn't make sense. No, they said, Russia's going to go in and crush them, and it's going to be all over. And my Wilhelm is saying, no, that's not going to happen. It's going to be different. Everything's going to be different in your world. And now we're looking at it and we're trying to figure out, oh, wow, how did they do this? How did it change? And then Russia's trying to figure out what to do. Now we're still sitting in this place of deciding what's going to happen. But I'm saying that it happens, everything happens energetically. The more of us who decide that we're going to start loving ourselves and getting on with doing what we're here to do, we energetically change what's happening even in other parts of the world. because it starts to pick up. The perfect example of that is Iran. The women in Iran cutting off their hair. People in other countries now are doing the same thing in solidarity to show support for what's happening. And so what it's saying, it's a time for us to start to own who we are in all aspects, including women.
Grassroots changes
Exactly.
by one person having the courage to stand against the status quo and take some criticism and take some rejection, and that motivates other people to stand up and have courage, and that energy can multiply. And if you get enough people, like you say in Iran, they're trying to take the country from maybe a backward state and try to modernize it. And my hat's off to them.
And that's a global change that we're moving through. I mean, we're seeing it there, but it's a global thing that's happening now, which is why we're all a part of it. And we're affecting we're affecting the outcome. And that is by how much, and I say this to all my folks, it's just about how much you're willing to love yourself.
Yes.
How much you're willing to get over your doubts, how much you're willing to let go of your judgment of who you were and what you've done. This is the thing that I put in my work. I want everyone to, and I said it the other day and I put it on my site, you are perfect. Your life is perfect. And people go, no, I had this happen to me and I did this thing and I screwed that up. I go, yeah, that was perfect. Because see, that's what you were given. And then when you figure out how to get over that, when you have the courage to get over that, when you, oh, wow, now I understand. Give that to someone else. This is how the world evolves. And it's not, it doesn't take much logic even to understand that's how the world has always changed. That's how the world has evolved. And like you said, it's one person. But the problem is we don't believe that we're the one person. We don't think that our little bit would make a difference in the world. And then, but even though we have countless examples throughout history of one person who did something that changed everything. And it was difficult for me because I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, I was given something that could give someone the ability to completely transform their lives and do something meaningful in the world. And if more people did that, it could change the world. Oh, how could that be me? Except I sit and I think, well, it is. Because what would be the problem? What would be the difficulty that someone has in their lives that I could not give them a solution to, like you were saying, what I gave you? I have them. I've written them all for the last 30 some years. So it has to be in there somewhere. But then again, that gulf of disbelief that we all carry is really challenging. It was challenging for me. And I'm saying this because I want everyone to understand it. We're always being prepared for what we're in the world to do. I published a book in 2019 on fear called Overcoming Fear, A Guide to Freedom. Didn't know why I was doing it, but I just knew I had to do it because I had experienced.
I loved it, by the way. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was challenging to write it because I had to get it out there.
You had a lot of courage to write what you did in there, and my hat's off to you.
Thank you. I said because it becomes for me, because I'm very introverted too, which is nobody understands because it's challenging for me to put myself out there, but I know that I have to because what I have will make a difference in someone's life, and I have to give that back. Once you uncover something like that, you have that. But it is this challenge. So 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now, I was with my mentor and I showed him the book and we were in this big training and I'm like, but I'm not going to tell people about it. I'm not going to talk about it. And he takes this book and he stands in front of the class and he shows it to everyone. He goes, it's like 150 people there. He goes, who would want to know how to overcome fear? And everyone raised their hands because we all go through it. But I'm like holding back because, oh, wait a minute, it couldn't have been me who have written something that could have been that helpful. I'm saying that because we all have this disbelief about what we have. And I recognize it in all my clients because I had it so much. So it's easy for me to see it and find it, And so, but now we're in a different place. And what I'm doing is taking this work that I have, and my contribution is causing people to be happy and successful.
which is a beautiful cause. You said 30 years ago, if you have the courage, tell people what was happening in your life 30 years ago and how you got to where you're at, and I will try to do the same.
Whoa, okay. It's a lot. We're gonna have to
I
do
told you
another.
this would be a good interview. I told you it would be great.
We'll probably have to do another one because it's
Okay.
the story is way. It's so long. But I'll give you one. Yeah, let's go back about 30, so almost 30 years ago. And this was 35 years ago. No, 30. And so I was moving through something that I could not explain. It was a horrible physical condition on my foot, and I had totally lost sight of who I was in my life. I had a business that I was doing that was really successful, but I also knew that I needed to start moving in another direction. I wasn't willing to do that, and I was resisting it. Whenever I resist something, I will form horrible physical things in my body. And so this became something that no one could figure out why it was happening. I ended up in the hospital going through so many surgeries and pain. So anyway, bottom line was I ended up losing part of my left foot, having to learn how to walk again, becoming addicted to opioids, becoming clinically depressed, all of those things. And I had to work through all of them and rebuild my life. I had to rebuild all of it because I lost everything. I lost my home. I lost every ounce of any penny that I had because I couldn't do anything. And then no one could figure it out. Doctors were studying. They put me in a teaching hospital because the doctors couldn't even figure out why would this have happened? And for me, I knew it. It's because I wasn't willing to walk on my own 2 feet. I wasn't willing to stand in my power. I wasn't willing to do what I felt intuitively, again, that I was brought to the world to do. And so I will never allow other people to move through that. It was years and years and years of recovery moving through that. And the other part of this was that I had, which many people do, I had lost myself in relationship also. We give ourselves away in many ways that we don't completely understand. They become distractions. Sometimes we do it with work. We'll put ourselves in a job that we get stuck into because, it's giving us money, but we can stay there knowing, but there's more for us to do. And I did that so many times. I had jobs where, we'll do some second interview, but I had one, it started so long ago back in when I was in New York in 1979, where I was having these horrible headaches. They're called cluster headaches, the most painful things ever. I suffered for decades with them until I figured out why I was having them, because I was resisting. I was resisting me. And I can, years later, I traced it back to a childhood trauma. When I was quite young, I was receiving information, visions or whatever, and I just doubted it. So I didn't want to know anymore. Didn't want to go there. And sometimes we shut down, but it doesn't matter. It only matters when we recognize what we've done and then say, okay, I'm going to own who I am. It's different for every single person, and every person comes into this world with worth and value and purpose and something that they're meant to give back. And mine is having other people do exactly that. That's it.
What you're doing with me. Yes. No, that is beautiful. I'm glad you got on the you got it on the record that yes, your physical health is tied to your spiritual growth. And when you started doing the spiritual things you were supposed to, your physical health got better, and people can learn valuable lessons from that. And I've had a few experiences with my stomach that's tied to the same thing. For me, in 1992, I was terrified of the idea of becoming a firefighter. I had a good job where I was making a lot of money, but I was very unhappy in it. And I had a few friends come to me and they said, trust me, you were 6 or 7 years old and all you wanted to do was play with fire trucks and talk to the fire department and do all that. And I kept saying, I don't have the courage to go do the job. I love the idea. I don't have the courage to go to the job. Eventually, they brought me down to the firehouse. They introduced me to other people. I saw them go out on runs. I heard them talk when they come back. And then one day a friend of mine twisted my arm and he said, we're driving to City Hall so you can fill out your application for the fire department.
Mhm.
So much like you did for me with the book and the movie thing, you need to listen to your friends occasionally and you need to say, they're right. They're right this time. I need
Mhm.
to take action. I can't procrastinate any longer.
Mhm.
That opened the door at the fire department, eventually to the police department. Part of the way through the police department, I went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, helped FEMA.
Mhm.
When I got back from there, I had wrote down in some journaling in a binder. I kept ideas in. I knew I had a book at that point,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the courage to write it. And it was a series of years of writing and attempting, and to be totally honest, writing a few books that were very marginal that
Mhm.
publishers looked at and said, this is average stuff. You could do better. And I had to have the
Mhm.
faith to keep showing up every day and writing and polishing it till I finally got the book published. But yes, it's
Perfect.
been a 30-year journey for me of fighting my fear.
And your story, that's going to be such a great one because it's just like Will Smith. I'm going to tell you that story.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've talked about that, but I use this a lot because he has a video online of him doing skydiving when he went on his skydiving trip. I don't know if you've seen it, but please find it. Will Smith on skydiving. He gives the most brilliant explanation of this, and it's funny and it's entertaining and it's true. He talks about how he had made this decision he was going to go and do the skydiving and then started to talk himself out of it because it was too frightening. And then because he had been set up just like your friends did with taking you to the station, he was set up to do that as well. And so he couldn't back out of it. And he was terrified this whole time. And then till he finally jumped. And then when he jumps, he's like, oh, wait a minute. This is exhilarating. What the hell was I afraid of? And that is what we're all doing. And and so I love using that because we're all doing that to a certain degree. And in the next time in our world, a lot of people might be doing that more. So it's important for us to remember we don't have to. We can decide to hold on to our faith and our belief in who we are, do our work, and get on with creating the world that we want to live in. That's all.
Yeah. No, you said it perfectly. You said, let's isolate this thing because it's very valuable. You said we're all talking ourselves into and talking ourselves out of making a tough decision and following through, and Will Smith and jumping out. And once he was out of the plane, he knew
Mm.
he had came close to talking himself out of doing it, which jumping out of the airplane probably gave him a lot of courage to show up to casting calls and trying to get a TV show. I mean,
Right.
that TV show was classic. I mean, it was untouchable. To think maybe he never jumped out of the airplane and then he never showed up for the TV casting call, we all missed out if he
And
would
then
have done
and then he wants everybody to jump out of planes now.
he wants everybody to jump out of planes.
Because once you feel, and this is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I get to work through all my crap. And once you do that and experience who you are, nothing else compares to that. There's no other feeling that one can have it better, more fulfilling than finally embodying their authentic self. There's nothing more than that. And that's the work that
your
I'm going to
personal
continue.
power, your personal power goes up, and your vibe. When you wake up in the morning, that energy to go right to business. Like I'm getting up in the morning and I'm going to business. I'm not going to call somebody and ask them what I should do. I'm going to go to business and I'm going to take fearless action today. That feeling that's associated with that is really untouchable. And if somebody's caught in that other energy where they don't have the courage to act, find a coach like Roger, let him talk you past your fear. And much like Will Smith, jump out of that airplane, metaphorically, jump out of that airplane, get past it, and then experience the fun of the coasting down in the parachute.
Okay. Thank you so much. This was great. This has been a wonderful interview, and you were the first one going into this. I have another one later today as well, but you are the first, and I'm grateful because you're probably one of the best examples of this work, one of the best demonstrations, and you're going to do so much more for so many others because of that, because of the step that you've taken. And I am extremely grateful. So.
Yeah, my film, the impact I want to make in my film is to bring unity together in a divisive world. If I can
Perfect.
do that in my film and bring people together in unity, have people walk out of the theater and feel charged to come
Mhm.
together and take action to make the world a better place, I will have success. I will have succeeded at my goal.
Great. Wonderful. Joseph, thank you so much. This was
Thank you, Roger.